They say the woods remember everything, every step and every scream. And on one quiet morning, a solitary bounty hunter named Asa Calder came across something the land itself seemed to want erased. A young enslaved woman named Mira was hanging from a tree, barely alive, her chest rising just enough to show she still breathed. A rough wooden sign rested against her body, carved with the words, "White man, don't forgive." Most men would have turned away and pretended they never saw it. Asa did not, and when she later woke, shaking with rage and fear, she told him what really happened. She had not been hung as punishment, she had been hung as bait, and the men who put her there were also hunting him. Two strangers, both already marked for death, now bound by the same enemy, Master Holston, a man who built his strength on fear, cruelty, and bodies left without graves. What the South never expected was this. The girl they tried to kill refused to keep running, and the man who had lived alone for years chose to stay and fight beside her. What followed was not justice. It was a reckoning, because once Asa cut Mira down from that tree, neither of them ever bowed again. Before going any further, comment where you are watching from in the world and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you truly do not want to miss. The late afternoon sun slipped through the Georgia pines in broken streams of gold and amber light. Asa Calder guided his horse along a trail that barely deserved to be called a road. It was more roots and dirt than anything else. His body ached with every movement. His throat felt dry and tight. 3 weeks of tracking had ended with nothing at all. The fugitive had vanished 2 nights earlier, disappearing like smoke in the dark. Asa shifted in his saddle, feeling the familiar burn low in his back. His horse, a grey mare he had owned for 5 years, moved with the slow weariness of an animal that had gone too many miles. He reached down and patted her neck. She huffed softly in reply. The woods closed in on both sides, thick with undergrowth and crawling vines that twisted and climbed. The air was heavy with dampness. Insects hummed in steady rhythm, a low buzzing sound that filled the quiet spaces between his thoughts. Asa removed his hat and wiped sweat from his forehead. His skin was dark and worn from years under the open sky. His hair was cut short, streaked with grey at the temples, showing the years he had survived. He was lean and solid, shaped by long days of riding, walking and tracking. He had been a bounty hunter for 15 years. Before that, he had lived many other lives, most of which he tried hard not to remember. The horse slowed near a cluster of moss-covered oaks, and Asa let her stop. He listened closely to the forest. No birds were singing, and though he could not explain why, the silence felt wrong. A tightness formed in his chest. He thought about the bounty he had lost. A thief who stabbed a shopkeeper in Macon. The reward had been $40. Not enough to live well, but enough to survive. Asa needed that money. His supplies were nearly gone. His ammunition was low. He had wasted 3 weeks chasing cold trails and false leads. The thief had beaten him this time. It happened. Asa hated failure, but he had learned long ago that pride was something men like him could not afford. The region had changed in recent months. There was more anger, more suspicion. White men traveled in armed groups now. They watched the roads and questioned anyone they did not know. Asa had been stopped twice in the past month by men demanding to know his business. He always carried his papers, proof that he was free, and documents explaining his work. Even so, papers meant nothing to men who cared nothing for rules. Asa's reputation cut both ways. Some sheriffs respected him. They knew he brought in dangerous men and paid him fairly. Others despised him. They saw a black man with a gun and assumed he was the threat. Asa preferred the woods to towns. Out here, he answered to no one. He urged his horse forward. The path widened slightly, and soon he spotted a creek winding through the trees. The water moved slow and shallow over smooth stones. He decided to stop for the night. Asa dismounted and led the mare to the water. She drank deeply. Asa filled his canteen and took a long drink himself. The water tasted clean, with a faint metallic edge. He unsaddled the horse and tied her to a low branch where she could graze. Then he searched for kindling. The forest floor was damp, but beneath fallen logs he found enough dry wood to build a small fire. As the flames caught, Asa opened his saddlebag and removed a small iron pot. He filled it with creek water and placed it over the fire. From a cloth pouch, he added a handful of beans he had been soaking. While they warmed, he leaned back against a tree and pulled out his stack of bounty posters. He had gathered 7 over the past 2 months. Most were ordinary. Men wanted for theft, assault, or desertion. The rewards ranged from $15 to $60. Asa studied each one carefully, memorizing faces and details. One poster made him pause. It was newer than the rest, the ink dark and sharp. Across the top, in large letters, it read, "Reward for capture." Beneath it was a name. Asa Calder. He stared at it. The description was vague. Black male, approximately 35 to 40 years old, armed and dangerous, wanted for interfering with family matters and disrupting lawful business. At the bottom was a signature, Garrett Holston, Holston Plantation. Asa did not recognize the name. He had never heard of that plantation. He had never crossed this man. He frowned and read it again. The reward was $100, more than most men were worth, more than Asa had ever earned on a single job. He folded the poster and slid it back into his bag, telling himself it had to be a mistake. Maybe another man with the same name. Maybe someone had lied to settle a score. It happened. Asa stirred the beans and ate slowly from the pot. The food was plain but filling. He chewed carefully, feeling the warmth spread through him. Dusk came fast. The light faded from gold to gray, then into deep blue. The fire cracked softly. Asa leaned back and watched stars appear through gaps in the trees. Then he heard it, a faint creaking sound, distant but steady. Asa sat up and listened. It came from deeper in the woods, like a gate swinging on old hinges or a branch bending under weight. He waited. The sound continued, slow and steady. He thought about checking it out, but decided against it. Animals moved at night. Deer, raccoons, possums. It was probably nothing. He poured water over the fire and watched the embers fade. Smoke curled upward in thin lines. Asa spread his bedroll at the base of a tree and lay down, resting his head on the saddle. The creaking sound continued in the dark. He closed his eyes and let exhaustion take him. A crow's harsh call woke him. Asa opened his eyes to a pale gray sky. Morning had arrived quietly. The forest was still except for that single bird. He sat up slowly, feeling stiffness in his neck and shoulders. His body complained from the hard ground. He had slept badly. Dreams had kept him half awake, filled with broken voices and footsteps that vanished when he tried to grasp them. The forest felt crowded again. Asa stood and stretched, his joints popping. He looked around the camp. Nothing had changed. His horse grazed nearby. His gear lay where he left it. He walked to the creek for water. The air was cooler now, and a thin mist clung to the ground, drifting between the trees like something alive. Asa knelt and dipped his canteen. As he lifted it, he caught the smell. Faint at first, easy to miss, but unmistakable once noticed. Sour, human, wrong. He stood slowly and scanned the trees. The smell came from deeper in the woods, not close but not far. He capped the canteen. His hand slid to the knife on his belt. He listened. Nothing moved, no sound except the creak and the distant crow. Every instinct told him to leave, to pack up and ride away. Whatever waited out there was not his concern. But the smell lingered, and beneath it was something else, a pull he could not explain. He followed it. Asa moved carefully through the brush, stepping over roots and pushing aside low branches. The mist thickened, clinging to his legs and soaking his boots. The smell grew stronger. After several minutes he saw her, a body hanging from a tree. Asa stopped. She was small and thin, clearly human. A young woman hung from a rope tied to a thick branch above. Her head drooped forward. Her arms hung loose. Her dress was torn and stained dark. The rope around her neck had cut deep into her skin. Asa approached slowly. She was black, young, maybe 20. Her face was swollen and bruised. Her feet dangled inches above the ground. A wooden sign was tied to her chest with rough twine. The words were carved unevenly. "White man don't forgive." Asa's breath caught. He reached for her wrist and pressed his fingers beneath it. A pulse, weak but there. She was alive. He drew his knife and cut through the rope as fast as he could. The fibers split. Her body dropped, and Asa caught her before she fell. She weighed almost nothing. He lowered her gently to the ground and checked her breathing. Shallow and uneven, but still there. He cut away the twine and threw the sign aside. Then he studied the rope around her neck. It was tied to tighten slowly, not to snap her neck. This was never meant to be quick. It was meant to hurt. Asa worked the rope loose and pulled it away, his jaw tight with anger. The skin underneath was torn and bleeding badly. He could see the shape of the rope fib. Airs pressed deep into her flesh. He leaned in close and listened to her breathing again. It was shallow and weak. She needed water medicine and a place to hide. Asa lifted her into his arms and stood. She felt almost weightless. Her head rested against his shoulder. He turned back toward his camp, but then stopped. Something felt wrong. Asa looked around the tree. The ground was crushed and disturbed. Boot prints, many of them heavy and spaced with purpose. He knelt down and studied the marks. 4 men. Maybe 5. They had stood in a rough circle around the tree. One trail of prints went east, another went west. Asa frowned. This was not simple punishment. If they wanted her dead, they would have killed her right away. If they wanted to send a warning, they would have left her where others could see her. But this tree was deep in the woods, hidden and quiet. This was bait. Asa felt the truth sink into his chest like a heavy stone. They had hung her where no one would find her fast, where someone would have to search and follow the smell. They wanted someone to come. Asa stood and adjusted her in his arms. He moved faster now, following his path back to the creek. His thoughts raced. Slave catchers used tricks like this. They would hang or chain someone far away and wait for others to try a rescue. When someone came, they would strike, but the tracks showed the men had already left. That only made sense if they planned to return. Asa reached his camp and laid her on his bedroll. He checked her pulse again, weak, but he poured water from his canteen onto a cloth and pressed it gently to her forehead. Her skin was hot with fever. He cleaned the rope burns on her neck as carefully as he could. The wounds were deep and would leave marks. Asa lifted her head and touched the canteen to her lips. He let a few drops fall onto her tongue. She did not move. He tried again. This time her throat shifted and she swallowed. Asa waited. After several minutes, her eyelids fluttered open. She gasped, pulling in air. Asa leaned closer and told her she was safe. Her eyes opened wide, filled with fear. She tried to speak, but only a rough sound came out. Asa offered the canteen again and told her to drink. She took small sips and coughed a little when she stopped. She stared at him, then looked around at the trees. Her breathing sped up. "Who did this?" Asa asked. She opened her mouth and whispered, "They are coming back." Asa froze, her eyes rolled back, and her body went limp again. Late morning. Light crept across the forest floor in pale beams. Asa knelt beside the small fire he had rebuilt. The flames were low, just glowing embers. He did not want smoke. Rising above the trees in his hands was a dented tin cup. Inside was a bitter tea made from bark and wild herbs. It smelled sharp and strong. He had learned it years ago from a freedman in Virginia who said it helped with throat wounds. Asa looked over at Mira. She lay on the bedroll, eyes half open. Her breathing was steadier. Now the fever had broken during the night. Her skin was cooler. Dee watched over her while she slept, checking her pulse and giving water. She did not fully wake until dawn when she stared at him in silence. Now she was awake enough to move and think. Asa tested the cup with his finger, still too hot. He set it down and waited. Mira shifted and raised her hand to her throat, touching the raw skin and wincing. "Do not," Asa said, "you will make it worse." She lowered her hand and turned toward him. Her eyes were clearer. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice rough and thin. "Woods near the Georgia border." Asa said, "A few miles east of the river." Mira frowned and tried to sit up but grew dizzy and fell back easy. Asa said, "You were out nearly a full day." She stared up at the leaves, watching the light move before speaking again. "You cut me down." "Yes." Why? Asa did not answer right away. He checked the tea again and then brought it to her drink. This Mira took the cup with shaking hands and sipped carefully. It burned her throat and she coughed. "It is meant to help." Asa said. She drank again and again, then handed it back. "Thank you," she said. Asa set the cup aside and fed the fire a small branch. "What is your name?" he asked Mira. She said, "I am Asa." Mira studied him, looking at his face, then the knife on his belt, then the horse nearby. "You are the bounty hunter," she said. Asa looked at her. "How do you know they talked about you?" She said, "The men who hung me. They said they were hunting a black bounty man who crossed the master. They said your name." Asa felt his chest tighten. "What else did they say?" Ira closed her eyes, breathing slowly. "They said you brought in one of the master's cousins weeks ago, turned him over to the law for running a gambling place. The cousin was jailed. The master was furious. Asa remembered the man Porter wanted for an illegal business in Savannah. The pay had been high. He had not asked questions. The master put a price on you. Mira said $500, dead or alive. Asa went still. That was a huge sum, enough to draw every tracker. They were using you as bait. Asa said softly. Mira opened her eyes. I know, tell me what happened. She spoke more quietly. I lived on Holston Plantation with my mother and younger brother. We worked the fields and stayed quiet 2 nights ago. My mother spoke back to the master. He was drunk and angry. He beat her in front of everyone. My brother tried to stop him. Mira clenched her fists. He killed them. Both shot my mother and broke my brother's neck. Asa said nothing. I ran. She whispered. I did not think, I just ran. They caught you, yes, the militia. They dragged me back, tied me in the barn and questioned me. They wanted to know who helped me. They tortured me, beat me, burned me when they finished. They chose to use me as bait. They said if they hung me in the woods you might come, or someone like you. They hung me at night. She said they stood around the tree talking. They thought I was dead. They said they would return in the morning to check the trap. You were not meant to find me so soon. Before Asa could answer, a sound broke through the woods. Who? F beats. Asa stood fast, grabbing Mira's arm and pulling her up. She cried out, but he did not stop move. He said he dragged her to thick bushes by the creek. The ground was soft with mud. Asa pushed her down and covered her with branches and leaves, working fast until she was hidden. Do not move. Do not breathe loud. She nodded. Asa kicked dirt over the bedroll, scattered the fire embers, grabbed his saddlebag and calmed his horse. The hoofbeats grew closer. 4 riders came from the west wearing dark coats, wide hats, rifles on their saddles. Asa saw the symbol on their sleeves. Holston's militia. They rode slowly, scanning the ground. Asa stood still. His horse stayed calm. They reached the tree. One man got down and touched the rope. It has been cut, he said. Another leaned forward, fresh. Maybe a day old. The first man knelt and saw the tracks. Asa's tracks. Someone found her, he said. Could be the bounty hunter. He looked around for a moment. Asa thought he was seen. Then the man turned away. The bait is gone. He is close. They rode east toward the camp. Asa waited until the sound faded. Then he returned to the bushes and uncovered Mira. She lay shaking, eyes wide. Asa helped her sit. They are going to the camp, he said. Mira grabbed his wrist, weak but firm. He will not stop, she said. Not until we bleed, like the rest. Asa looked at her. We have to move. Now the sun was already lowering when Asa began to pack, moving fast with no wasted motion. Every item he chose had a clear reason. Dried meat wrapped in cloth, a hunting K. Knife with a cracked leather sheath, 2 pistols, one tucked in his belt and one kept in his saddlebag, a small water pouch, a length of rope, flint and steel. Everything else was left behind. The bedroll stayed where it lay. The cooking pot remained beside the cold ashes of the fire. Even the extra ammunition, too heavy and too noisy, was buried in the dirt. Asa tied the supplies into a tight bundle and slung it over his shoulder. He turned toward Mira. She had barely managed to stand. She leaned against a tree, one hand pressed to the bark to steady herself. Her legs shook under her own weight. Can you walk? Asa asked. Mira nodded. She took a single step forward and almost fell. Asa caught her before she hit the ground. He held her upright with one arm around her waist. I can walk, Mira said through clenched teeth. Not far, Asa replied. He positioned himself at her side and let her lean on him. Together they headed toward the creek. The forest opened into swampland about a mile east of the camp. The ground softened beneath their boots. Mud clung and pulled at every step. The air grew thick and damp, heavy with moisture and the stench of rotting plants. Asa guided them into the water. It was shallow at first, only ankle deep, then rose to their knees. The mud below was slick and dangerous. Mira gasped as her feet sank, but Asa kept her steady. Keep moving, he said. Insects swarmed around them. Mosquitoes bit their necks and hands. The water rippled with unseen life, fish, snakes and things Asa did not want to think about. They moved through the swamp for nearly an hour before Asa found firm ground. It was a small rise of earth surrounded by tall reeds. Trees grew close together, their branches forming a natural cover. The ground was damp but solid enough to sit on. Asa helped Mira onto the rise and eased her down onto the driest spot he could find. She leaned back against a cypress trunk, breathing hard. Asa scanned the area. The reeds were tall enough to hide them from anyone passing by boat. The trees shielded them from above. It would work. He began to build a shelter. He snapped low branches and tied them together with vines. He draped Spanish moss over the frame until it formed a rough roof. The shelter was small, barely large enough for two, but it would keep them dry and hidden. When he finished, he crawled inside and motioned for Mira to follow. She moved slowly, each motion filled with pain. Once inside, she lay on her side and closed her eyes. Asa sat near the opening. He pulled out the dried meat and handed her a piece. "Eat," he said. Mira took it but did not bite right away. She held it loosely and stared at the water beyond the reeds. "How long do we run?" she asked. Asa chewed his own portion. "Until we find somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe." Asa looked at her. Mira turned her face toward him. Her eyes were sharp despite her exhaustion. "Hull's militia will follow us," she said. "They'll search every town, every road, every hiding place between here and the border. They won't stop until you're dead and I'm hung again. Then we stay ahead of them." Mira shook her head. "You can't outrun a man with resources. Holston has money. He has men. He has connections in every county from here to Tennessee." She paused. "Running won't save us." Asa said nothing. Mira slowly pushed herself upright. She winced but forced herself through the pain. "I want the plantation ruined," she said. Asa stared at her. "You're barely alive. You can't even walk without help. I don't need to walk to plan. You're talking about attacking a plantation. Armed men, walls, guards. I'm talking about staying alive." Mira's voice grew stronger. "They will hunt us no matter what. If we run, they'll find us. If we hide, they'll wait. The only way we live is if we break them first." Asa leaned back against the shelter wall. He studied her face in the dim light filtering through the moss. "You want revenge," he said. "I want them destroyed. That is revenge. Maybe." Mira held his gaze. "My mother is dead. My brother is dead. I was tortured and hung like an animal. If wanting them destroyed is revenge, then yes, I want revenge." Asa stayed silent for a long time. He had spent his life avoiding this kind of fight. He hunted fugitives because it kept him moving, kept him alone, kept him free from ties. Revenge was messy. It dragged you into battles you could not control. But Mira was right about one thing. They were already at war, and they had not started it. "Tell me about the plantation," Asa said. Mira blinked. "What?" "If we're doing this, I need everything. The layout, the guards, the weak points." Hope flickered in her eyes. "The main house is in the center," she said. "A big white building with columns. The master lives there with his wife and 2 sons. The overseer has a cabin near the western edge." Asa listened. "The slave quarters are east of the main house," she continued. "Rows of small cabins. Around 40 people live there now. The storage barns are to the north. Grain, tools, supplies. The horses are kept in a stable near the overseer's cabin." "What about deliveries?" "Twice a week. Wagons come in from the south road. They bring supplies from town and haul cotton out." Asa reached down and smoothed the mud near the shelter entrance. He began to draw with his finger. "Show me." Mira leaned forward and pointed. "Main house here, quarters here, barns here." She traced a thin line. "There's a hidden path the workers use. It runs from the quarters into the woods. The overseer doesn't know about it." Asa marked the path. "Guards, 4 at night. 2 near the main house, 2 near the barns, always armed." Asa studied the rough map. His mind was already measuring distances, angles, and entry points. A sound broke his focus, the quiet splash of oars cutting through water. Asa raised his hand. Mira fell silent. He crawled to the edge of the shelter and peered through the reeds. A rowboat moved slowly across the swamp. 2 men sat inside, rifles resting across their laps. They scanned the water and vegetation as they went. Hull's men. Asa pulled back and looked at Mira. He pressed a finger to his lips. She nodded. Asa slid into the water near the edge of the island. He stayed close to the reeds, sinking until only his eyes and nose were above the surface. Mira followed, slipping into the water beside him and ducking under the reeds. The boat drew closer. Asa could hear the men talking. "Waste of time," one said. "They're long gone. Master wants every inch searched." Master wants a lot of things. The boat passed within 20 feet of their hiding place. Asa held his breath. The water was dark and cloudy. Insects skimmed the surface above his head. The men kept rowing. Their voices faded as they moved deeper into the swamp. Asa waited until the sound was completely gone. Then he rose and helped Mira back onto the island. She was shaking, her lips tinged blue. Asa pulled her into the shelter and wrapped the remaining cloth around her shoulders. Night settled over the swamp. The darkness was complete. No moon, no stars. Asa sat beside Mira and listened to the water. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we move north and find higher ground. Then we plan." Mira nodded, already drifting. "Tomorrow." The mist clung to the trees like wet cloth. Asa helped Mira onto solid ground. Her breathing was steadier now. Her steps were slow, but she no longer needed his full support. They moved north through the forest. The swamp faded behind them. The ground grew firmer with every mile. By mid-morning they reached the edge of cultivated land. A small settlement lay ahead, scattered farms, simple houses, dirt paths winding between them. Smoke curled from chimneys. Chickens scratched in yards. Asa recognized the place. He guided Mira toward the eastern edge, where a black farmer named Jonah lived. Jonah was cautious and quiet, a man who knew when to speak and when to stay silent. Asa had used his barn before, once during a storm and once while healing from a knife wound. They approached from the tree line. Asa studied the land. No strange horses, no signs of visitors. He knocked on Jonah's door. After a moment, it opened slightly. Jonah's thin face appeared, grey hair framing deep-set eyes. He looked at Asa, then at Mira. "Trouble?" Jonah asked. "Always," Asa said. Jonah opened the door wider and waved them in. The house was plain but clean. A table, 2 chairs, a small stove. Jonah bolted the door. "Who's hunting you now?" "Holston." Jonah's face hardened. "The plantation owner?" "Yes." "What did you do?" "Nothing." "He thinks I did." Jonah looked again at Mira. She stood near the door, watching him closely. "She escaped from him," Asa said. "He hung her as bait. I cut her down." Jonah let out a slow breath. He moved to the window and peered through the curtain. "Holston's men have been riding through every town for 3 days, Jonah," H said, "asking about a black man traveling with a girl." "How many?" 6, maybe 8. "They're offering money for information." Asa nodded. "We need food and rest. Then we move on." "You can't stay long," Jonah said. "If they come back and find you." "I know." Jonah studied them, then sighed. "The barn. I'll bring food after dark. Don't light a fire, don't make noise." Asa thanked him. Jonah led them to the barn behind the house. Inside, the air smelled of hay and old wood. He pointed to a loft above the floor. "Up there. You'll be hidden if anyone looks in." Asa climbed the ladder first. Mira followed carefully. The loft was tight but dry, hay bales stacked along the sides. Jonah disappeared back into the yard. Punctuation house. Asa sat down and inspected his pistols. Mira eased herself onto a bale and shut her eyes. "We cannot keep hiding forever." Asa slid fresh rounds into one of the pistols. "We are not hiding. We are preparing." "Preparing for what?" Asa finished loading and placed the pistol beside him. He looked at Mira. "You told me Holston receives deliveries 2 times a week." Mira opened her eyes again. "Yes." "What sort of deliveries?" "Supplies, food, tools, cloth, sometimes gunpowder. The wagons come from town. They use the same road every time. South Road, always the same driver." Asa leaned back against the wall. "We hit the wagon tonight." Mira straightened. "You want to steal his supplies. I want to ruin them." Mira's face changed. Understanding settled in her eyes. "He will send more men after us. He already is. This way we make him feel it." Mira gave a small smile. It was the first one Asa had seen from her. "When?" "After dark. We will have to move fast." Night came slowly. Jonah brought bread, salted pork, and a canteen of water. He sat with them for a short time and scratched a map into the dirt floor of the loft. "South Road runs here," he said, drawing a line with his finger. "The wagon usually comes around midnight. If the driver is late, he camps near the old mill." Asa studied the map. "How far from here? 3 miles, maybe 4. Guards, just the driver. Sometimes a second man if Holston is nervous." Asa nodded and fixed the route in his mind. Jonah left them alone after that. Asa and Mira climbed down from the loft when the moon rose. They moved through the forest toward the south road. The trees thinned as they drew closer. Asa could see the road cutting through the darkness, a pale strip of packed dirt. He placed Mira behind a fallen log about 30 yards from the road. "When the wagon passes, you scream," he said. Mira looked at him. "Scream. Loud, like you are hurt. The driver will stop. Then I take him." Mira nodded slowly. "All right." Asa crossed to the other side of the road and crouched behind a thick oak. He waited. The sound of wheels reached them first, creaking wood, hooves striking dirt. A single wagon came around the bend. One driver sat at the front, reins in his hands. No guards. Asa glanced toward Mira's hiding place. The wagon rolled closer. Then Mira screamed. It was raw and desperate, slicing through the night. The driver pulled the reins and the horses stopped. "Who is there?" he shouted. Mira screamed again. The driver climbed down, lantern in one hand and a pistol in the other. "Show yourself!" He moved toward the sound. Asa stepped onto the road behind him. "Drop the gun," Asa said. The driver spun around. Asa already had his pistol aimed at the man's chest. The driver hesitated, then dropped his weapon. "Do not shoot." Asa kicked the pistol away. "On your knees." The driver obeyed. Mira came out of the trees and walked to the wagon. She climbed onto the seat. Asa kept his gun trained on the man. "Where is the second one?" "No second man tonight," the driver said fast. "Just me." Asa believed him. He struck the driver across the head with the butt of his pistol. The man fell unconscious. Asa went to the wagon. Mira was already pulling back the canvas. Crates filled the bed. Grain, tools, rolls of fabric, barrels marked with black powder signs. Asa began dragging crates down and smashing them open. Grain spilled across the road. Tools clattered into the dirt. Mira found the gunpowder barrels and rolled one off the wagon, cracking it open with a stone. Asa unhitched the horses and led them into the trees, tying them where they would be found later. He returned to the wrecked wagon. Mira knelt beside the mess, holding something. Asa stepped closer and saw it, a small wooden sign, blank, the same size and shape as the one once hung from her neck. She stared at it. "They keep extras," she said softly. Asa said nothing. Mira stood and tucked the sign under her arm. Together they scattered what remained across the road. Asa poured gunpowder over the ruined supplies but did not light it. Too much risk. They left the wagon broken and the driver unconscious. Before dawn, they returned to Jonah's barn. As they passed the trail, Mira placed the blank sign carefully against a tree where it would be seen. Jonah was awake when they climbed back into the loft. He brought water and stared at the dirt on their clothes. "It is done." Asa nodded. Jonah sat heavily. "Holston will strike back. He will send more men. He will burn farms if needed." "I know," Asa said. "Then why do it?" Asa looked at Mira. She lay on her side, eyes closed, the blank sign beside her. "That is the reason," Asa said quietly. Jonah shook his head and went down the ladder. "Stay one more night. After that you leave." Asa agreed. Late morning light slipped through the cracks. Asa woke to Jonah climbing up with a tray of bread, eggs, and weak coffee. "Eat fast," Jonah said. "Then we talk." Asa sat up. Mira was already awake, watching Jonah closely. They ate without speaking. The food was cold but filling. Jonah stared through the wall gaps, fingers tapping his knee. "You have made noise," he said at last. "The kind that carries. That was the goal." Holston's men rode through at dawn, 6 of them, asking harder questions, offering more money. "Did they come here?" "Not yet, but they will." Mira set down her cup. "Then we leave." Jonah hesitated. "There is something you should know." He leaned closer. "There are others hiding deep past the creek. 15, maybe 20, runaways from Holston and nearby plantations. How long? Months, some longer. They live rough, moving when needed. Why not go north? Fear. They are afraid to move and afraid to stay." Mira asked why he was telling them. "Because what you did last night gave them hope. They are talking about it." Asa set his cup down. "You want us to meet them. I think they will listen, especially to her." Mira looked at her wrists, rope marks still visible. "They will not trust strangers. They will trust someone who lived through it." Asa looked at Mira. She nodded. "Take us to them." Jonah led them through the woods an hour later. The path was narrow and thick. After 2 miles he stopped. "Let me go first." Jonah returned with 3 men and a woman, thin, worn. One young man stepped forward. "You hit the wagon." Asa nodded. The man looked at Mira. "Who is she?" Mira showed her wrists and the bruises on her neck. "Holston did this. He hung me from a tree. This man cut me down." "We heard," the young man said. "We thought you were dead." "I should be," Mira said, "but I am not, and I will destroy everything he built." Something shifted in their faces. Fear sharpened into anger. "What do you need from us?" The camp lay hidden in a ravine. 15 people lived there under rough shelter. Children sat quietly. Asa spoke. "Holston will not stop hunting you. If you want to live, you must take his power away." "We are not fighters," an older woman said. "You do not have to be. You only need to move quietly and listen." Mira spoke of the plantation, the guards, the weak points. "What if we are caught? The same end you face if you wait here." One by one they stood. Asa trained them that afternoon. He taught silence, watching signs, and setting ambushes. Mira worked with the women, teaching distraction and deception. At dusk, Asa split them into 3 groups. The first would burn Holston's outer storehouse, the place where he kept his supplies. They split the tools meant for tenant farmers. The second group would free 2 laborers Mira knew were chained near the edge of the land. The third group would cut a communication line that ran between Holston's estate and nearby plantations. "We move fast," Asa said. "We don't fight unless we must. We hit him and vanish before he knows we were there." They moved out under the cover of night. The storehouse caught fire quickly. Asa watched from the trees as flames swallowed the building. The runaways disappeared into the forest before anyone could respond. The laborers were released without trouble. One of them joined the group right away. The other ran north and never looked back. The communication line was cut in 3 different spots. Messages would now take days to travel. By midnight, all 3 groups returned to the ravine. No one had been captured. No one had been injured. The fugitives sat around a small fire, breathing hard, eyes shining with something Asa had never seen before: pride. Mira sat next to Asa. She stared into the flames without blinking. "We're not finished," she said softly. "Not until everything he built turns to ash." Asa studied her face. The firelight made the bruises on her neck look even darker. He stayed silent. The fugitives began talking among themselves, planning and dreaming about what they could destroy next. Asa looked away from Mira and into the darkness beyond the fire. He knew what he had started. He knew what she was becoming, and he said nothing. 2 nights later, the forest camp had grown braver. The fugitives spoke openly now. They laughed by the fire. They sharpened tools and planned the next attack with a confidence that hadn't existed before. Asa sat away from them, cleaning his pistol. He watched their faces and saw how fear had changed into something dangerous. Mira sat beside him, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick. "The western storehouse next," she said. "It's larger and worth more. They keep seed grain there for the whole season." Asa nodded slowly. "We'll need more people. Better timing." "We have enough now," she said. "Maybe," Asa replied. She looked at him. "You don't sound convinced." "I never am," Asa said. "That's how I stay alive." Mira almost smiled, then went back to her drawings. Across the fire, a young man named Caleb sat by. Himself. He was new to the group, pulled from hiding only 3 days earlier. His hands shook as he held his tin cup. Asa had noticed him before. The way he jumped at sharp sounds, the way his eyes kept scanning the trees whenever voices grew loud. Fear was normal, but Caleb's fear felt different. It was the kind that slowly ate at a man. Asa stood and walked over. "You all right?" Asa asked. Caleb looked up too quickly. "Fine. You don't look fine, just tired." Asa crouched beside him. "If you're not ready for the next strike, you can stay here. No shame in that." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I can handle it." Asa studied him a moment longer, then stood and returned to Mira. Something about Caleb bothered him, but he couldn't name it. Hours later, Asa woke to movement. It was past midnight. The camp was quiet except for soft breathing and the faint crackle of dying embers. Asa sat up slowly. His hand went to his knife. He scanned the camp. Most of the fugitives slept under makeshift shelters. A few guarded the edges, but Caleb's bedroll was empty. Asa stood silently and moved through the camp, checking the shadows. There was no sign of him. He reached the tree line and listened. Faint footsteps faded into the distance. Asa's chest tightened. He turned and hurried back. He shook Mira awake. "Get up," he whispered. "Something's wrong." She sat up at once. "What?" "Caleb's gone." Her eyes widened. "Gone where?" "I don't know, but we have to move now." Mira jumped up and began, waking the others. Asa grabbed his weapons and supplies, but before they could organize, a gunshot echoed through the forest. Then another. Then many more. Chaos exploded. Holston's militia stormed the camp from 3 sides. Men on horses, men on foot torches lit the night run, Asa shouted. The fugitives scattered. Women grabbed children and fled into the trees. Men seized whatever weapons they could. Asa fired twice, knocking one rider down. He reloaded fast. Mira ran toward him. "We have to." A rope snapped around her ankle. She crashed to the ground. 2 men dragged her backward through the dirt. She screamed and clawed at the earth. Asa turned and fired. 1 man fell, the other hid behind a tree. Asa rushed toward Mira, but a rider blocked him. The man swung a heavy club. Asa dodged, grabbed his arm and pulled him off the horse. They wrestled in the mud. Asa stabbed the man's side, but more soldiers were coming. Asa looked up and saw Mira being lifted onto a horse. Her hands were tied. Her mouth was gagged. "Mira!" he shouted. He ran toward her, but a gunshot ripped through his shoulder. Asa stumbled. Pain burst through him. He fell to his knees as blood soaked his shirt. His vision blurred. He tried to stand, but a boot slammed into his ribs. Asa collapsed onto his side. Through smoke and firelight, he saw a tall man on horseback approaching. The man wore a long coat. His face was sharp and cold. "Holston," Asa thought as the man dismounted and walked to Mira. Holston grabbed her chin and lifted her face toward the flames. "The girl who wouldn't die," he said calmly. "You've caused me a great deal of trouble." Mira spat at him. Holston smiled. He let her go and turned to his men. "Take her back," he said. "Hang her at sunrise, properly this time. I want everyone to watch." One man hesitated. "What about him?" He pointed at Asa. Holston glanced down at Asa bleeding in the mud. "Leave him," Holston said. "He'll be dead by morning." Holston mounted his horse and rode away. His men followed, dragging Mira with them. Asa tried to move, to reach his pistol, but his arm would not obey. His body felt heavy and cold. He heard Mira screaming his name as they pulled her into the darkness. Then her voice faded. The camp burned around him. Bodies lay scattered. The survivors had fled into the forest. Asa pressed his hand to his shoulder and crawled through the mud. Every movement sent pain through his chest. He reached the edge of the camp and found Jonah's overturned wagon near the trees. Asa dragged himself inside. He tore cloth from his shirt and pressed it against the wound. The bleeding slowed but did not stop. His breathing came in short gasps. He closed his eyes and saw Mira's face, saw the marks on her neck, saw the fire in her eyes when she spoke of turning Holston's world to ash. He whispered her name. No answer came. Dawn crept over the forest. Asa lay shaking from blood loss. His shoulder burned. His ribs ached. He forced his eyes open and stared through the broken slats of the wagon. The sky was pale gray. Fires smoldered in the distance. Then drums began to sound, deep and steady. Asa knew what they meant. "Execution day," he whispered. He said Mira's name again. The drums continued. His vision faded. His hand slipped from the wound. Late morning light filtered in. Asa's eyes opened slowly. Pain returned first. His shoulder felt like it was split open. He tried to move and failed. "Easy," a voice said. Jonah knelt beside him, holding a clean cloth to the wound. "Jonah," Asa whispered. "Found you at dawn," Jonah said. "Thought you were dead. Almost were." Asa looked down. His shoulder was wrapped in cloth. Blood stained it, but the bleeding had stopped. "How long?" Asa asked. "A few hours. You've been out since sunrise." Asa tried to sit up. The world spun. "Don't," Jonah said. "You need rest. Where's Mira?" Jonah's face darkened. "They took her back. Word's already spread. They plan to hang her this afternoon. Public." Asa's chest tightened. "I have to get her. You can barely stand." "I don't care." Jonah shook his head. "The camp is gone. People ran north. Holston's men killed 4, wounded more. There's nothing left." Asa forced himself up. His legs shook. "I'm not leaving her." "You'll die. Then I die." Jonah grabbed his arm. "You won't even reach the gate. They're watching everything." Asa pulled free. "I didn't ask for help." "Jonah." H sighed. "There are 3 men and 1 woman hiding near the creek. They escaped." Asa looked up. "Where?" "Half a mile east. Take me to them." Jonah hesitated, then nodded. The walk was slow. Asa leaned on Jonah. Pain followed every step. Blood soaked the bandage again. Jonah tightened it twice. "You're losing too much," he said. I'll manage, Asa replied and kept moving. Near the creek, 4 people were crouched behind a fallen tree. They looked up when Asa and Jonah came closer. Asa knew them from the camp. There were 2 young men, one older man with a scarred face and one woman whose hair had grey streaks running through it. The woman stood up first. Her name was Ruth. She had worked in Holston's kitchen before she escaped 2 months earlier. Asa, she said softly. You're alive. Just barely, Asa replied. The older man stood next. His name was Samuel. He had once been a blacksmith on a nearby plantation. We thought you were dead, Samuel said. We saw you get shot. I'm not dead yet. One of the younger men stepped forward. His name was Isaiah. He was only 17. They took Mira, Isaiah said. We tried to stop them, but there were too many. Asa nodded slowly. I know. The second young man, Marcus, stayed low, still crouched. He kept his eyes on the ground. Ruth folded her arms. We're heading north. We leave before sunset. I'm not going north, Asa said. Ruth frowned. You can't go back to the plantation. That's suicide. Mira's there, Asa said. They're going to kill her. They'll kill all of us if we go back, Marcus said as he stood up. His voice rose with fear. We barely made it through last night. We can't fight Holston's militia. Asa met his gaze. I'm not asking you to fight them. I'm asking you to help me get inside. Samuel shook his head. There's no way in. Guards are everywhere. There is a way, Asa said. Mira told me about a drainage tunnel on the east side. It runs under the outer wall and leads to the old storage cellar. Ruth's eyes widened. I know that tunnel. It's tight, barely wide enough for one person, and it floods when it rains hard. Has it rained lately? Asa asked. No. Then it will work. Isaiah stepped closer. Even if we get inside, then what? Holston has men everywhere. We'd be walking straight into a trap. Asa's jaw tightened. I'm going with or without you, but I can't do it alone. The group went quiet. Ruth looked at Samuel. Samuel looked at Isaiah. Marcus stared at the dirt. At last Ruth spoke. She saved my life once, she said softly. When I first escaped, she hid me in the smokehouse for 2 days. She fed me and told me where to go. She paused. I owe her. Samuel nodded slowly. I'll go. Isaiah hesitated, then said, Me too. Marcus shook his head. This is madness. Then go north, Asa said. No one's stopping you. Marcus looked at the others, then cursed under his breath. Fine, he muttered. But if we die, I'm blaming you. Asa almost smiled. Fair enough. Jay. Ona stepped forward. I can't go with you. I have family nearby, but I'll give you what supplies I can. Thank you, Asa said. Jonah handed him a small bag. Inside were dried meat, a canteen, and a box of bullets. Asa checked his pistol and carefully reloaded it. We move now, Asa said. We rest once, then reach the tunnel by nightfall. Ruth nodded. Let's go. They moved through the forest without speaking. Asa led, even though his body begged for rest. Fever crept through his bones. His vision blurred at the edges, but he kept walking. Ruth stayed close behind him, watching him carefully. Samuel and Isaiah stayed on the sides. Marcus walked at the back, whispering prayers under his breath. They stopped once near a shallow stream. Asa knelt and drank deeply. The water was cold and cleared his head a little. Ruth checked his bandage. Fresh blood had soaked through again. You're going to pass out, she said. Not yet, Asa replied. You're stubborn. I've heard that before. She tightened the bandage. Asa clenched his teeth but made no sound. They walked for hours. The sun slowly crossed the sky. Shadows grew longer. At last, as night started to fall, they crouched in tall grass near the edge of Holston's land. Asa could see the outer wall in the distance. Torches burned along the top. Guards walked in pairs. He scanned the eastern side. There was a low stretch of stone near the ground, covered in weeds. The drainage tunnel, Asa pointed. That's our way in. I see it, Ruth said. Samuel frowned. The guards rotate every 10 minutes. We'll have a short window. Asa nodded. We wait for the next rotation. Then we move fast. They stayed low in the grass. Asa's shoulder throbbed. His breathing was shallow, but he didn't move or speak. He watched the guards, counted their steps, learned their rhythm. Finally, the guards turned toward the western corner. We go now, Asa whispered. The guards' boots scraped against stone as they walked away. Isaiah counted silently. 1, 2, 3. He rose. The others followed. They crossed the open ground quickly. Asa's legs burned, his shoulders screamed, but he pushed on. They reached the tunnel. Asa knelt and pulled away the weeds. The opening was narrow, with dark water pooling at the bottom. One at a time, Asa whispered, "Stay low." He went first, squeezing through and crawling on his stomach. The tunnel was cold and wet, barely wide enough for him. Ruth followed, then Samuel, then Isaiah. Marcus came last. The tunnel felt longer than Asa expected. His breathing echoed around him. Water soaked his clothes. After what felt like hours, though it was only minutes, he saw faint orange light ahead. He crawled faster. His shoulders scraped the wall, and sharp pain shot through him. He bit down hard to stay quiet. He reached the end and pushed out behind a row of small wooden buildings, the slave quarters. Asa pulled himself free and crouched. Ruth came out next, then the others. They pressed together in the shadows between two buildings. Torchlight flickered nearby. Asa listened. Footsteps. 2 sets, coming closer. He signaled Samuel. Samuel nodded. 2 guards came around the corner, walking slowly with rifles on their shoulders. Asa waited until they were close, then struck. He grabbed the first guard from behind, covered his mouth, and drove his knife into the man's side. The guard went limp. Samuel tackled the second guard. After a brief struggle, Samuel twisted sharply and snapped his neck. Both bodies fell without a sound. Asa and Samuel dragged them into the shadows and covered them with old sacks. Ruth pointed across the yard to a larger building. "That's the overseer's shed." Asa nodded. "That's where they'll keep her." Isaiah crouched beside him. "We need a distraction, something to draw the guards away." Asa looked toward the stables. Horses shifted inside. One guard stood nearby. "Fire," Asa said quietly. "A small one. Near the horses. Enough to scare them." "That'll bring everyone," Marcus said. "That's the idea," Asa replied. "Ruth, Samuel, you start it. Make it look like an accident. Knock over a lantern, then disappear." Ruth hesitated, then nodded. "Isaiah, Marcus, you're with me." Asa said, "We go for the shed." Marcus whispered another prayer. Asa checked his pistol. 6 shots left. He hoped it would be enough. Ruth and Samuel slipped away. Asa watched until they vanished. Minutes passed. His heart hammered. The fever made the world feel distant and strange. Then someone shouted. Orange light burst near the stables. Horses screamed and kicked. The lone guard ran toward the flames, yelling. More guards rushed in from all sides. Shouts overlapped. Chaos spread. "Now," Asa whispered. They ran across the yard. Isaiah and Marcus stayed close. They reached the shed. Asa pressed his ear to the door. Silence. He pushed it open slowly. It creaked. Inside, one lantern burned on a wooden table. A rope lay neatly coiled beside it. Mira sat against the far wall. Her hands were tied behind her back. A gag covered her mouth. Her eyes widened when she saw Asa. Asa rushed to her and pulled the gag down. "Asa," she whispered, her voice rough. "I'm here," he said. He cut the ropes. Her wrists were swollen and bruised. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." Isaiah helped her stand. Marcus watched the door. "They plan to hang you at dawn," Asa said, "in front of the whole town." "I know," Mira said. "Holston wants everyone to see. We're getting you out." "No," Mira said firmly. "Not yet." Asa frowned. "What?" "I want him to see me," she said coldly. "I want him to know I survived again." Before Asa could answer, voices shouted outside. The fire had been controlled. Guards were returning. "They're coming back," Marcus hissed. "We have to move," Asa said. Too late. The door flew open. 4 guards rushed in. They grabbed Mira before Asa could reach her. Asa drew his pistol and fired twice. 1 guard fell. Another stumbled back. More men poured in. Isaiah fought wildly. Marcus swung a wooden plank. Asa was struck from behind and hit the floor hard. His pistol skidded away. Hands grabbed him and yanked him up. A rifle butt smashed into his ribs. Holston stepped into the doorway. He wore a fine coat. His face was calm and pleased. "The bounty hunter," Holston said softly. "How disappointing." Asa tried to stand. A guard kicked him down. Holston turned to Mira. "Still defiant, still foolish." Mira spat at his boots. Holston smiled. "Take her to the tree. It's nearly dawn. The town should be gathering." The guards dragged Mira outside. She fought, but they held her tight. Holston looked down at Asa. "You'll watch," he said. "Then you'll hang beside her." Dawn came slowly. Gray light spread. Across the plantation grounds, Asa was dragged outside. His hands were tied behind his back. Blood trickled from his mouth. A crowd had gathered outside the gate. Townspeople, workers from the fields, even children. They murmured nervously among themselves. In the middle of the yard stood the tree, the very same tree where Asa had first met Mira. Mira was already there. The rope hung around her neck. She balanced on a wooden stool. The overseer held the other end of the rope tightly. A cruel smile spread across his face. Holston stood nearby, arms folded. "This is what happens to those who try to escape," he shouted loudly. "This is what happens to those who defy us," the crowd whispered. Asa struggled against the men holding him, but his body was too weak, his injuries too severe. The overseer reached toward the stool, then gunfire cut through the air. Ruth emerged from the shadows. She fired her rifle. The overseer's head jerked back. He fell to the ground. Chaos exploded. Samuel and Isaiah stormed out of the slave quarters. They swung axes and brandished stolen knives at the guards. Asa wrenched free. He grabbed a fallen rifle and swung it like a club. A guard collapsed at his feet. Mira kicked the stool aside and yanked the rope from around her neck. She looped it around the nearest guard's throat. She pulled tight. He gasped, struggled, and then went limp. Asa fought his way toward her. His vision blurred. His body screamed in protest, but he kept moving. Holston drew a pistol and aimed at Mira. Asa lunged at him. They crashed to the ground. The pistol discharged. The bullet struck the tree. Holston tried to roll away. Asa landed a punch, then another blood sprayed across Holston's fine coat. Mira appeared over them, the rope in her hands, eyes wild with fury. She wrapped it around Holston's neck. "Wait!" Asa gasped, but Mira didn't pause. She pulled the rope tighter. Holston clawed at it, turning red, gasping for air. "Mira!" Asa said urgently, grabbing her arm. "Don't!" She looked at him, tears streaking her face. "He deserves it. He does," she said. "But don't let him finish the story," Asa whispered. Mira's hands shook. The rope wavered. "Begin." Them. Flames devoured the stables. Smoke billowed into the grey morning sky. Mira glanced down at Holston. His eyes bulged. His breaths came in shallow, harsh gasps. She eased the rope slightly, then yanked it hard again. It was clean, fast. Holston went still. Mira dropped the rope and stumbled backward. Asa caught her. They stood beneath the tree, breathing heavily. Around them, the plantation burned. The sun rose slowly, the sky turning from grey to pale orange. Smoke spiraled from the plantation house. Asa stood near the tree, shoulder throbbing, ribs aching with every breath. Dried blood smeared his face and hands. Mira sat beside him, staring at the charred ruins, her face blank, distant. Slowly, people began emerging from the slave quarters. Men, women, children. They moved cautiously, as if the ground might swallow them whole. They looked at Holston's lifeless body, at the burning house, at each other. Silence hung heavy. Asa forced himself to stand. Pain shot through his shoulder. He braced himself against the tree. "Gather everyone," he instructed Ruth. She nodded, moving through the crowd, touching shoulders, speaking softly. Within minutes, nearly 50 people stood in the yard. Freed workers, families who had lived in fear for years. They waited. Asa looked at them, his voice rough but steady. "The master is dead." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, some wept. A few sank to their knees. "The militia is scattered," Asa continued. "The overseers are gone. The house is burning. This land," he gestured around them, "can be yours now, if you choose it." An older woman stepped forward. Clara. Asa had seen her earlier tending to the wounded. "What do you mean, ours?" she asked. "I mean what I said," Asa replied. "You can stay, work the land for yourselves, build something new, or leave. Head north, find freedom somewhere else." Clara turned to the others. "And who decides?" "You do," Asa said. "All of you." Silence fell again. Smoke drifted across the yard. The morning light grew brighter. A young man spoke up, voice trembling. "What if they come back? The militia or Holston's family?" "They might," Asa admitted. "But you'll be ready. You know this land better than anyone. You know how to survive." Mira rose slowly, walking into the center of the crowd. Her voice was quiet but unwavering. "I ran from this place. I thought if I got far enough I'd be free. But they followed. They hung me and left me to die, and I realized something." She paused, fists clenched. "Running doesn't make you free. Taking back what was stolen does. The crowd listened, rapt. This land broke us. It broke me. But it doesn't have to break us anymore. We can stay. We can make it ours. Grow food, build homes, raise our children without fear. Clara wiped her eyes. And if they come back? She asked. Mira's jaw tightened. Then we fight again. Ruth stepped forward. I'm staying. I have nowhere else to go. I might as well build a life here. Samuel nodded. I'll stay too. One by one, others spoke. Some wanted to leave, chasing family or new dreams in the north, but most chose to remain. They looked at the fields they had tended for years, the cabins they had slept in, the land watered with their sweat and blood. It's ours now, Clara said softly. We take it back. Asa nodded. A sense of calm settled over the crowd. People began to move, organizing, planning. Some gathered tools. Others tended to the wounded. Asa watched, a strange warmth in his chest. Hope. Mira moved toward the main house. The fire had mostly died, leaving charred beams and smoking rubble. She stepped carefully through the debris. Asa followed. What are you looking for? He asked. The sign, she replied. She found it near the collapsed porch. The wooden board was scorched but still legible. White man don't forgive. Mira picked it up, then found a piece of charcoal near the ruined kitchen. She knelt and began scratching new words over the old ones. Asa watched. Her hand moved slowly, deliberately. When finished, she held the sign, We Forgive Nothing. She stood and hammered it into place on a still-standing post. Crooked, smoke-stained, defiant. Asa looked at her. You sure? Yes, she said simply. She turned toward the stables. Asa followed. Inside, 2 horses remained, skittish but unharmed. Mira stroked one gently. We're leaving, she said. Asa nodded. I figured. I can't stay here, she admitted. Even if it's ours, I can't look at it every day. I understand, Asa said. Where will you go? He hesitated, thinking of years wandering, hunting, sleeping outdoors, never staying long. I'll go with you, he said quietly. Mira studied his face. You don't have to protect me anymore. I know, Asa said. But maybe I don't want to walk alone anymore either. Mira's expression softened. She nodded. They led the horses outside. Clara and Ruth approached, carrying bundles of food, blankets and water. For the road, Clara said, pressing them into Mira's hands. Thank you, Mira whispered. Ruth hugged her tightly. You gave us this. Don't forget it. Tears filled Mira's eyes. She hugged Ruth back. Asa shook Samuel's hand. Keep them safe. We will, Samuel promised. Asa and Mira mounted the